Agroforestry, I mentioned it already before, that with deeper rooting from the trees, it picks up nutrients from lower layers again, brings them upwards, that can be recycled by the annual crops planted in between the trees. So it reduces leaching and waste of nutrients. Perennial cereals. I don't have an example of what could be a perennial cereal, but it leads to continuous growth of a crop that can be harvested and bring in money, but at the same time can be used as a cover crop, and also that roots are always present in the soil, leading to an improved soil health. Yeah, this is an example of agroforestry and cover crops. So in strips, the trees are planted. Cover crops are planted in the strip with the trees, and in between, either the cash crop or also a cover crop can be grown. Let me skip this one. But the summary of this picture is that if you use reduced tillage or use cover crops or another system, it could lead, because this is a model, it's not tested in practice, that it could lead to more carbon dioxide sequestration per year. But the conclusion of this model was that it was mainly achieved by a 6-year crop rotation, including 4 what they call lay crops like clover or another green manure, and then 2 years of a cash crop. So if I'm not sure if the profitability will be improved for the farmer, but in terms of carbon dioxide sequestration, it helps. The reduced tillage, they also modeled what's the effect of reduced tillage. The impact on carbon dioxide sequestration was not that big or even absent. And how realistic is building up soil carbon? Now, first of all, I think the idea of regenerative farming in building up soil carbon for sub-Saharan Africa is limited, especially when you also look at the principles that no external input should be used, like fertilizers, but access to manure, well, what I found is limited. Sandy soil has a low nutrient retention, and it takes time to store carbon in the soil. And also conclusion of colleagues of Wageningen is that, well, for Africa, it's actually essential or a must to use chemical fertilizer to create enough biomass that can be put back in the soil and then build up soil carbon. And also the benefit, the financial rewards based on ecological practices are difficult, particularly for small-scale farming. The investment is quite huge, and on the short term, you will not generate a lot of financial benefits. And also, you need a lot of biomass. If you look at the conventional farming practices, that, well, each time that you bring in biomass, if even with 65 tons per hectare or 31 tons per acre per year, only 15% of the biomass is turned into soil organic matter. The remainder is lost because of decomposition already and taken by plants, or decomposed and turned into carbon dioxide already. So if you want to increase the organic matter content from 1.7%, what I think is a nice average also for Africa, then it takes over 20 years to finally have 11.1%. And even then, this is a theory model. Because the higher the organic matter content, it's not a linear increase anymore, but it flattens, because the higher the organic matter content, the more difficult it will be to increase it still. But next to the biomass, to make sure that it will form a stable soil organic matter, you require also 470 kilos per hectare or pounds per acre nitrogen. So not only adding biomass is enough. So you also need to add nutrients to make sure that the organic matter can be converted, or the biomass can be converted into organic matter. When we look at crop diversification, what's the impact on the parameters that are essential for regenerative agriculture? The zero, if the black dot for each parameter is at the zero, it means, well, it has no impact. So for yield stability, for instance, the third blue one from the bottom, you can see, well, crop diversification has no positive, but also no negative impact on yield stability. So in terms of that, there is no change. If you look at profitability, there is a bit of a positive impact. So due to crop diversification, a farmer can make a better profit. Also, the input use efficiency increases. Pest and disease control increases. Soil quality, it increases a bit. And I'm a bit disappointed it didn't increase more than what they showed in this graph. Greenhouse emission, the black dot indicates a shift to the right, so positive. But if you look at the total of the orange graph, I'm not too impressed that regenerative agriculture has a lot of effect on greenhouse gas emission. Yeah, this is a traditional crop rotation, and I think if you look at this, then yeah, this is always not only in terms of biodiversity, but also for maintaining soil quality, soil fertility, productivity of the crops. This is what we should promote, that we look at the families and rotate according to crop families. And yeah, this is a bit based on, if you start with legumes, it provides a lot of nitrogen. And then the best advice is, then it's better to follow that with a crop that's really a nitrogen feeder, that and like cabbage and cauliflowers, they really need a lot of nitrogen. While the root crops, the allium, beetroot, carrot, and the other ones mentioned there don't need that much. Well, of course, they still need nitrogen, but not as much as the brassicas. So that's also why in this rotation, the recommendation is to have them in the next cycle. And the root crops, they also go deeper. So it also means that they pick up the leftovers easier from deeper layers that was left behind after the brassicas. And finally then followed by Solanaceae, and then back to the legumes to incorporate nitrogen back to the soil. So this is just a simple schedule, but you can think about different crop rotations with different theories behind it to optimize the effect of the preceding crop on the next crop. So that's also the idea of regenerative agriculture. Look at the effect of the crop of the preceding and what the next crop requires. Intercropping. It can also reduce use of fertilizers, but also can have an impact on push-pull factors on pest and disease control. It's the simultaneous cultivation of multiple crops. If you talk about mechanization, then this is really a headache. And also in mechanized crop protection or fertilizer application, then this is not easy to maintain. And that's also why in the Netherlands we now think about, we call it strip cropping, using beds of 3 meters wide. And for those beds, special machines are still developed. So in a way, intercropping, but then not as dense as you see on this picture, can still take place. Another example, the maize soybean. The soybean also incorporates nitrogen in the soil, and at the same time, the maize can pick up the nitrogen and benefit from it. Let me skip this one. Also intercropping in this system, and there are more examples. If you look at maize intercropped with desmodium and Napier grass or elephant grass, it has a positive effect on reduced levels of the armyworm, the fall armyworm in maize, that the desmodium is pushing out the moth from the maize because it releases some chemical components that the moth doesn't like. And at the same time, the Napier grass or the elephant grass releases chemical components that attracts. Also, the desmodium improves the soil nutrient level in the soil from which the maize can benefit. This is really something that we are considering in Europe, in big monocrop fields, that we have to look at more hedges to create patches and plots where enemies and predators can live in. While I think for a lot of regions in Africa, Asia, the plots are already small and already surrounded by shrubs and trees, so it's less relevant. But the idea is that around the plot of vegetables or wheat, shrubs or natural crops, flowers are grown to offer a harbor for predators and natural enemies. So this is something that we would like to try out in Europe, that there is a mix of agriculture with animals and also natural environment and hedges that creates a harbor for natural enemies, for which then less chemical inputs are needed for crop protection. I saw a comment popping up from Epafras, but the chat disappeared from my screen again. Let me see if I can find it back.
I was saying the question of Epafras was already presented from the first slides of Herman.
Okay.
But you can also repeat it, Herman, for...
Yeah, so Epafras just put in the chat, with the increase of the world's population and high demand for food, is it possible to practice regenerative agriculture? I think that's also what you want to discuss after I finish my presentation, right? That you would like to discuss what as a team can we do with regenerative agriculture? Or should I try to give an answer now? Lisette.
You can also give your thoughts about it, Herman.
I think, well, maybe not regenerative agriculture, but principles from regenerative agriculture we really should consider, because otherwise we try to live by the day now and try to feed the people now, but what will happen tomorrow? So I think we don't have an option. We don't have a choice. We have to rethink the current system and think about the impact and how can we change that into more, now I come back to an old buzzword, sustainable. So one way or the other way, yes, we have to think about the world population, but on the other hand, we also have to think about the world we live on. Otherwise, we feed the people now, but the people of tomorrow have no future because the world is gone. Yes. So practices related to the use of inputs, and I think this is already what East West KT and we and together in projects already look a lot at the use of resistant tolerant varieties to reduce pesticide use, implement IPM very seriously, also look at farmers and convince them that please look at nature and principles rather than grab your knapsack sprayer and start spraying once you see a problem popping up, or even worse, that they start spraying before a problem pops up. So reduce the use of external and chemical inputs, fertilizers and pesticides when possible. And look at prevention control measures, and also look at how can we integrate biomass, organic manure, to improve soil fertility, because that also results in less problems for plant growth, but also for pest and disease tolerance. So to give you an idea what so far has been found on effect of principles on restoration of soil health and reversal of biodiversity loss. If I'm not mistaken, this table was compiled by Giller, who wrote an article last year on what's now regenerative agriculture and are the results really that promising. Then you can see that the principles like minimum tillage, maintain soil cover, foster plant diversity, avoid pesticides, they all have positive effect. The more stars you see, the more positive on the restoration of soil health. If you look at reversal of biodiversity loss, then it's not so clear. It's the plant diversity that have a positive impact on reversal of biodiversity loss, and avoid pesticides. But I think that goes without saying. The less chemicals you use, the less natural enemies, beneficials are preserved.